you like.
Yeah,
There we go. It says live here. I'll click on that. Let's have a look. Wendy Jean's here. Hello, Wendy Jean. Hello, love. She
Hello,
says.
Wendy.
So what I'll do is I'll share this to a couple of things myself.
Amazing. Let me share it as well. It'd be really great. So if we were kind of, you know, right up in the world and we had sound engineers doing this all for us.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen this week.
But you're in your conservatory and I'm in my one bedroom.
Yeah. That's the one.
So that's not happening yet. Right, let me put this onto my Heart Sangha page as well. Right, that should do.
Yeah, so looking for oblivion, that's what I was looking for a long, long time, because I couldn't stand all the stuff that was going on in my head, basically.
Yes.
You know, and I think you know, you say that I think everybody's going through that at the moment. I think what's going on the planet is there's a great big awakening of everybody's consciousness, you know, the way that they're thinking. And we've just got past Easter, and I think Good Friday to me represents the bit where everybody gets crucified.
Yes.
Right. And that's the dark night of the soul, you know. And I think the crucifixion to me represents, I've come to the end of my thinking. I'm so unhappy. I don't seem to be able to find any peace of mind. Right. And in the end, we try all the stuff that the world has to offer. Like we go to all these courses and do this, do that, eat this, you know. And in the end, the answer's in here, mate. You know, so instead of expecting, which means to look out, we start to inspect. And I think that's all part of the stage of human development that Maslow talked about and all these different sorts of people, you know. So I see now that when people are saying to me, you know, I feel like I'm losing my mind, that's a really positive thing if you understand what to do next, you know. Oh, yeah. And I think my job and your job and probably people like ourselves is to help people to reconnect with their essential self, which I feel they do that by opening and softening the heart and getting in touch with their soul essential selves, you know. And, you know, and then that guides them then. It's not like some sort of external guru. They get in touch with this inner guru who's just been waiting for the opportunity to say, here, I'll show you how it's done. Follow my lead, you know. And that's what it seems to be for me. Is it's intuition that we look for, not extuition.
I think that I love that, Joe. I think I would also add to that, you know, that I 100% agree with everything, you know, you just said. What I would also add to that is sometimes on the path of devotion, that's why you have an external guru, although I don't think it says in the Indian philosophy there's literally none about at the moment because the weight of the cosmos, there's a lot of people calling themselves gurus that aren't necessarily that. So the idea really of a guru in the East is someone who has dissolved their self to the point that what's left is their true self, which is the same as the true self in you. So that when they call them avatars in India, like Buddha, like Christ, like Krishna. And so then at the deepest sense, the idea of on the devotional path, which is initially a dualistic path until I and my father are one, you know, the first with the child. And then so the idea is that you're creating an archetype within your own mind of that perfect self within you that you're not able to perceive yet. So in a way, you're externalizing that which you're not aware of within yourself, and you're loving and you're adoring it. And then over time, the idea is through, and I guess this is where I sometimes, there's a Carl Jung quote that goes along the lines of, you don't become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but exploring the darkness. And I think that's 50% true, but sometimes in the devotional practices, by imagining beings of light, they're the very thing that carry you into the darkness with enough awareness and consciousness within yourself to start to be able to dissolve and work with that darkness. I understand what he's saying if people are escaping using that, then it's a problem. But then I think initially this path starts to bring you into yourself. And I think in the path of devotion, that's what a guru represents. It represents that which we can't see in ourselves. But as we start to see it in ourselves, that's when we start, oh, I have Christ within myself. I have a Buddha nature. And then the more that we witness that, the more we go, oh, this is actually me. I'm not who I thought I was. And so we start to awaken that. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, back to yoga. I mean, that's the path of devotion, isn't it? And I think most people have experienced at some point in their life the feeling of love without thinking about it. You know, that feeling, you see, I've got a thing going up the spine now. That normally means that I must be talking. See, what happens to me is that sometimes I'm talking, I get this thing, it comes in and I get a big shove up my spine. And that almost like says to me, you're on the right path, son, just keep going, you know what I mean?
Wonderful.
And so that feeling of love, you know, it's not directed at anybody. It's a feeling that emerges from deep within us, but doesn't actually come from within us. It comes from outside of ourselves, which is really ourselves. You know, I'm talking like a guru now, aren't I? Really? You know, but it's that thing that emerges. So it's universal consciousness, which is love to me. You know, that is it's a feeling to me. And what I realized was that most of the time that I was fired in love with people, it was a sentimental love that was made up in my imagination. So I think imagination and fantasizing is a tricky thing, really, you know, because there's a constructive use of imagination and there's a destructive use. And I can see most of my life, I thought I knew what I was talking about until I realized I didn't have a clue. And that's liberation then, you know, and to me, what's helped me is a guru, if you like, or a person guided me back to myself and then basically let me off the hook then to go and experience life, being guided from a different motivational point of view, which was a feeling, you know. I mean, people talk about this feeling of objective consciousness, you know. When you can become objective about your subjectivity, that means that you can see the ego playing all its games. And you realize that what you thought was you, which was the ego, wasn't the ego. It was the pretentious, synthetic, made up, conditioned thing, you know. Beautiful. And so I think that's what it is, Graeme. I mean, you know, it's a bit Taoist, really, because it's about creating space. But I hear people say, I'm holding space for you. And something in me irks at that, because anything that's sort of holding seems to be a tense thing to me, you know. And I think that it's all about totally letting go, where total space is created, but the ego part of you isn't taking part in this. I know that you know what I'm talking about, but it's hard to explain in words, isn't it? You know? So to me, my life now is more or less guided by the way that I feel, but I'm not generating the feelings through senti, which means feelings, and mental means thinking. So I'm, you know, because I'd look at your face, right, and I think, oh, he's thinking this now. So I thought it was psychic. I could read what your mind. So I would then think, okay, how do I have to feel and how do I have to respond here? I'll change the way I'm looking to try and please him, because this is the way that and that was my life. I'd be watching people's faces and changing myself all the time to try and what's the word I'm looking for? To try and fit in with what I thought that you were thinking.
I love that. Yeah, it's very powerful. That I think I read somewhere that that's what we start with as babies, that babies are looking at the face of the person, and they're looking for cues. If I do this, will this person frown? If I do this, will this person be happy? And so that people pleasing, and it may be warranted for some level, you know, like that we don't, you know, that we do generally, maybe we want to be empathic, that there's that helper's high where if we're kind to someone, we release feel good chemicals, they do, and those watching. But I also completely embrace, and my experience is, that is, I think it's Lao Tzu says in Taoism that if you try to please people or live up to their expectations or fit into their idea about you, become a prisoner to them. So yeah, if you're living in that way, it's quite a trap. So yeah, I get that. I don't think I on my path, I don't think I'm at that place yet all the time. Well, and there's a lot of the time I am. I'm in that I am, you know, literally. I'm in the real I am. And then there's other times I really have a mind that is very destructive, and I'm not able completely to step back from that. And that's, I guess, or to integrate in it. And that's an ongoing lesson for me at the moment. I'm doing a lot of clowning training because, or trickster training, because that's about addressing these shadow selves and bringing them out with joy and trying to channel them differently. And so what I tend to use when my mind is like that, because in Taoism, you have two paths. You have the water path and the fire path. The water is like Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is very gentle. Now, I've had a mind blank, but there's another guy. It's not Sun Tzu. I think that was a little Art of War. But there's another guy that wrote another famous book that I'll have to put underneath later. And his is the fire path. So his is about doing but moving from that place of being. So his is more of a focus path. And I think what I witness sometimes I need to put effort into concentration. They call it one-pointed mind, where my mind's like this. And so I bring it to a mantra and a breath, and slowly on that one point, it becomes still. And then it seems like I need to use a technique of focus from that. And then other times, I can kind of, that natural stillness is there, and I can kind of get behind my thoughts or dance with them in a very particular way. So I think I seem to, at this part of my journey, need both focus and surrender. It's, you know, that those two. I love what you said, Joe, about the dark night of the soul. I think that's so powerful. And I think you've used the word that it's the end of thinking, that you realize all your thoughts are tearing you apart, and that even the idea of God or Buddha or whatever is a thought. Even an idea of love is a thought. And as the dark night of the soul deconstructs all that, there's a moment of terror, because it's like, what's left? And then you realize you're being carried from the opinions and thoughts about truth into what the truth actually is, which is your own beingness, you know?
Yeah, I see that the dark to me represents the sacred feminine. It's the womb of the universe, you know. And I think that, you know, if there is a sex or a gender or whatever to God, it will be feminine. It will be a female, you know. And I think, you know, I think that the seed is planted within the womb, which has all the components. So that's just like an activation of let's get going and create, you know. And that's how I see it. And I see what's happening now across the planet is it's almost like the feminine is making a comeback, because for a long time, and we've talked about this before, we've been in this sort of more masculine dominated sort of world for many years, you know. And I think in the shift of ages that we talked about last time, you know, lots of people think that we're in sort of Kali now, moving into Dwapara, or however we say that, you know. I think where I feel now, looking outwards and watching things, is we've come to the end of that destructive cycle. It definitely seems like that. And most people are waking up to the view that there's got to be a better way to live our lives here. And I think we've been dominated by capitalistic thoughts. You know, they're material thoughts. And caput, capitis in Latin means head. You know, so the head has dominated this, you know, and so market forces have been dominated by capitalism, you know. And I think what's coming back now is, and that's a masculine thing, that really, what's coming back now is a more flowing, your Lao Tzuvian thing. Well, I've just made that up. Lao Tzuvian sounds good to me. But, you know, Lao Tzu, the gentleness of the sacred feminine is coming back. And to me, from a neuroscience point of view, that's to do with the vagus nerve. You know, and the vagus nerve in technical terms is called trophotropic. And what trophotropic means, it means nurturing. The masculine is called ergotropic, and that means to do work and defend. That's the fight or flight response. The trophotropic parasympathetic response is a nurturing rest and digest and recuperation response. And so things that we do, like mindfulness and taking time out to try and metaphorically decapitate ourselves from the head and just sit in the heart, that's a rebalancing thing. And I think that's my job, is to help people to reconnect to their heart and to understand the feeling when balance is coming in. But, you know, you get in, don't you? You start to relax, and the monkey mind comes in to say, I haven't got time for this, right? You know, you need to do the dishes, you need to do this, you need to clean this, you need to mark these papers. And it's just saying to that, right, just back off a bit. I'm going to take more time, and we'll both benefit from this. You know, and I mean, I'm not sort of going on any sort of train of thought here. I'm just sort of speaking in what's coming out. But what I learned is I thought I knew what I was talking about, Graeme, just like now. But looking back retrospectively, I didn't have a clue about myself whatsoever, you know. And I just feel like every day I'm just scratching the surface now, you know.
What's your sense, Joe, of when you say yourself? Because I haven't got a definite answer to this yet, but I've got insights and understandings and experiences. Who do you feel that you are? You know, what's your sense on that?
Well, when I look in the mirror, I don't know who this person, you know, most of the time I think, who are you know, because I used to be so, is me hair right this way, which is me best side, you know, all that sort of stuff. And if I was driving in a car and the window was open and my hair blew, I would think, oh God, me, you know, and I used to be so obsessed with what will people think of me and how am I looking? I don't seem to be attached to that anymore. You know, I'm more attached to a comfortable flowing feeling. So it's almost like I can't describe Joe as such, other than it's a sort of a flowing feeling thing, you know. But I know, like you, that we're born in the spirit of Heyoka, you know. We are the jokers, you know, and all my life and from an early age, my mother used to say, stop acting the fool, you know, and I did, and I tried to stop acting the fool, but it seemed to be natural in me, right? And when I realized that I am a joker that carries a really serious message, I understood that that's my soul's purpose. So I take the piss a lot, you know, and, you know, and I do. And I never really mean to, I mean, and I can do. And when I was on the drink and stuff, I could use my mouth like a weapon, right? And I could kill you from 3 miles away, you know. It was that sharp and horrible and vile. But I realized as well, though, I can use humor now to help people to lighten up, because I think when people lighten up temporarily, they forget themselves, and it's almost like the spirit flies in, the light gets in to introduce a bit more sense, if you like, really. So the answer to your question is, I'm not sure, to be honest.
Great. What I witness in myself, I don't know how you feel about this, is that there's a part of me which is a witnessing stillness, and there's a part of me that is responding to that. So it seems like what I could call me, the experience of me, seems to be a reflective experience of different energy fields. So what I mean by that is, when I woke up this morning, I was grumpy. You know, I was tired, I was grumpy, I couldn't meditate it away. Luckily, I did a session and then had a strong coffee, which was amazing. And the coffee was my medicine. It stopped me being grumpy. And but so grumpiness is I'm a person when I'm grumpy that says that, well, doesn't say this, to actually chooses not to say a lot of the grumpy things or think a lot of the grumpy things. And then there's a me that's in love, and in love there's a me that responds and talks, and then there's a me that is peaceful and that responds, and then there's a me that's happy. And it almost seems that this reflection of, if you like, the smaller self it's like a mirror of some kind that's reflecting whatever frequency range another self is able to perceive. So it feels like I think definitely I resonate with the Heyoka, the Joker, the Fool. And I also very much, I guess because of my Tai Chi practice, I resonate very much with the yoga path, which is the path of a yogi. Their connection, if you like, you beautifully described it, Joe, that raising Kundalini, sometimes they call it, that raising energy in the spine at the beginning of the conversation, is that to them, the divine, if you like, you use the word loosely, is an energy field of bliss. And so that the job is to slowly figure out how to cleanse this little self so that it can become a clearer and clearer mirror to that universal light bliss, universal unconditional love, that it can be strapped to a cross and still choose compassion, that it can be, you know, reach that, you know, even to talk about going to a cross for me and I'd just kind of go and run and hide under a bed, you know, I'm not even near that level yet. So yeah, I wonder if, you know, what are your thoughts on that, mate? Do you think we're evolving? Do you think we're already done, or both, or, you know?
Yeah, it's both. I see it as both, you know. you know, when I wake up in the morning, if I feel grumpy, I am not grumpy. I have grumpiness, right?
I love that.
You know, because it's an attachment really. And, you know, it's what I attach the definition to, you know, and what I see as anger is simply blocked love. Grumpiness is blocked love, right? But to a lesser extent than anger, you know. And I think what happens is, I think as you get onto this so-called spiritual path and you become aware of then an energy body, that's when you move from a human having a spiritual experience to a spirit having a human experience, you know, and I think that's what the crucifixion, yeah, let's come back again now. That's what I've got it right up my space. See, this is what happens is, that means you're on the right path, son. So the crucifixion is when you move from your human self, from 3.5 chakras, when you actually move to 3.6 chakras, that's the opening up to the divinity within the human. So that's when the soul actually comes online and starts to work through. And I think what happens then is over time with various practices like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, all those things, you know, anything to realign yourself. That's why I think that if I was going to prescribe anything at all, it will probably be yoga and things like hatha yoga, you know, with a good teacher. And that's why you do need an external guru sometimes to be able just to give you a nudge in a different direction, you know, to help you. Because I don't think that you have to do this yourself. There are people who may be a few steps along who say, yeah, well, I was going through that. Yeah, just turn your foot that way. How does that feel? You know, so that's what I think that's about. You know, and that's what I do. That's what you do. You can see somebody because you've been there and say, look, I tried this. Just try it, see if it works for you. I think that's what it's about. It's an indication and someone pointing out. Now, it might be exactly the wrong thing that you need, but until you try it, you don't know, you know. So I think, yeah, I have a feeling. I've just called it grumpiness. But really what it is it's just a slight obstruction. I'm going to go deeper into my heart, open it up more, and allow my energy, light body, to chase away that obstruction. And so I can be more fully expressing this flow, really. And I think that's what it is, you know, and you can get trapped in my view, you can get trapped in positive psychology and you can say, I'm grumpy, I'm going to bring a positive thought in, rah, rah, rah. Yes, you can. And I think what that does is it just overlays the obstruction and just fools people more, you know. I mean, the title of this little chat we're having today is basically the end of suffering, you know. And I think what I learned about that, when I give my talks, I give a lot of talk to patients and things. And I say to them, put your hands, this is when we're allowed to be in a big room with people, you know, put your hands up, right? If you're suffering from diabetes, and all the hands go up, right? And then I say, okay, hands down, put your hands up if you've got diabetes, but you're not suffering from it, right? And they all go, and half of them do, you see, because they've accepted the pain, you know, they've accepted the suffering. And the more positive then, because they're doing things then, because they realize that they can take actions. See, a lot of people who are suffering from it are completely and utterly hijacked by it, aren't they? Oh, I'm a diabetic. I've got this, I've got arthritis, I've got this, that, and the other. Sort of half the people accept it and become resigned to the fact that they can't do anything about it. So they're the victims of it, right? But I think the other half realize, hang on, there's quite a lot I can do here, right? From myself, this is true empowerment, isn't it? I can use my innate resourcefulness here in order to improve my condition. And the miracle happens is a lot of them realize that a lot of them, through their own choices, have brought a lot of this stuff on themselves, especially type 2 diabetes. There's no doubt about it that type 2 diabetes, in my opinion, is brought upon by the way we handle stress, right? You know, and stress is simply, and this is from the Health and Safety Executive of the UK, stress is simply, it's an adverse reaction that people have to excessive pressure or other types of demands placed upon them. So adverse means negative. The important thing is, Graeme, is excessive pressure. Right. So if we can become attuned to our body and the signal that our body sends us when it's tipped over the edge into excessive pressure, that would say, hang on, stop. I'm in a situation of excessive pressure here. I need to take a step back, regulate the pressure back to optimum, and then carry on from there. And I think that that's what yoga is about. It's what Tai Chi is about. Because when you're working from your optimal operating zone, right? I call this optimal operating zone enhancement. That's ooze. When you're in a state of ooze, right, you're open, you're flowing, and there's no obstruction. And what seems to happen then, miraculously, when you're in the flow, new ideas come in on how you can act to improve your situation even further.
I love that, Joe. That's so beautiful. I think, yeah, on your first point around that as well, it's like I've heard the word toxic positivity, and I think that is what you're describing. People hear positivity and they think, oh, I'm meant to be up all the time. Now, I tried that and it made me down more times than I was up. Because it was like, you know, it's like I was just, and I labeled it then. What I saw then is that's a form of self-harm. It's a form of self-hatred. It's like the idea I was shown once about 15 years ago, a very powerful meditation experience, the first time what you could call Kundalini awakening. And I always hesitate to go into these because I don't want people thinking, well, I'm meant to have that. I think sometimes we have metaphysical, very powerful experiences, in my case, because I'm really dumb and I need something like that to go, okay, I should pay attention to this, as opposed to the subtlety that anyone else might get, you know? But I was shown in a very powerful experience as I first had this big Kundalini awakening that I hated myself. And that I'd spent 10 to 12 years up to that point trying to earn the love of the universe. Like if I worship enough, if I sacrifice enough, if I'm poor enough, if I put my needs completely aside and just serve others, even out of a place of obligation, then somehow I'll earn some kind of heavenly appreciation. And then this Kundalini awakening showed me very clearly that the love was already there. It had never gone anywhere. And what was stopping me experiencing that was the need for me to, or the belief that I needed to earn it. And it was like, wow, this is shining on everything. It's shining on criminals. It's shining on saints. It doesn't care. It just shines. And so I think up to that point, that had been part of trying to be positive, to appease, and I realized, oh, this love loves me on my worst day. It loves me when I'm rejecting myself. When I don't love myself, it still loves me. And then I suppose as I've gone along that journey, I've seen what that presence was to me, which was the divine soul. That's how I saw it. It was, I mean, to cut a long story short, it was a realization there's more to it than even this, but in my human body with this central nervous system, this is the best I can perceive. There's higher realms after this as well, once we leave the body behind, but my body won't be able to take more of this love. My cup was filled to overflowing. But in that moment, I saw that, oh, I'm lovable. It took 15 years or so to integrate really what that meant, and I'm still integrating it. That, as you said at the beginning, when you wake up and you feel grumpy, it's like, oh, this is beautiful. I'm allowed to feel grumpy. I'm still a lovable person at being grumpy. I'm still acceptable, and I can be acceptable to me in that sadness and that grumpiness. So yeah, I really love that. I think also I found I have quite a negative mindset, which surprises a lot of people. Which is probably why I choose happy. And for me, I have to make more of a choice to be positive and happy also. So there seems to be like feeding the wolves inside of me. Which wolf do you feed? I have a very deeply negative, self-hating wolf that isn't really prominent in my life, but waits in the shadows, and in the right environment, give it the right food, it would slowly gain power again. So I think for positivity, for me, it seems to be the ability to allow myself to be in a depressed, anxious place, but also when my energy field is a bit more expansive, to also choose to do things that bring me happiness and lightness and love. It seems to be this dance of being and doing for me that I'm kind of always moving in and out of. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Makes perfect sense. I think I'm writing this book. I think I told you last time. It's called The F-Off Approach to Health and Happiness. And F-Off stands for focus on feelings first. And the feeling is a representation of what's actually going on in our consciousness, right? And we have a conscious bit that thinks it's know what it's talking about. So I'm grumpy because of this. And most of the time, it's not that that's causing this grumpy feeling. It's something below the level of our consciousness, right? It's something from the past, something in our subconscious or unconscious mind. And the subconscious is really a metaphor for past thinking, past thoughts, past deeds. It's actually to do with memory. Subconscious is memory, it's memory based. So if we can understand that and actually go through it, right, and go beyond memory, then all those feelings and definitions and classifications go away. Something came to me is, just don't give it a second thought. Because that's the problem, you see. We give it a second thought, and then we give it a third thought, and then we're into 1,000 thoughts then. And that's what causes the disturbance, you see. So 4/5 of the iceberg is underneath the surface. Our consciousness is above the surface, thinking it knows what's causing the problem. And in actual fact, it's hardly ever that at all. Because when you try and rewrite it and you're still left with the feeling, it wasn't that in the first place. That's distraction. That's how unscrupulous organizations and people keep you distracted away from going deeper within yourself, you see. So let's say, for example, there was organizations who want to keep you distracted so you can't think for yourself and make different decisions. They put up all sorts of things going on all over the place. And then they'd say, on Monday, we're going to do this. And on Tuesday, we're going to change our mind and do this, you see. So people don't get a chance to settle and rest and sink deeper and go all the way through their unconscious back into beyond consciousness. I don't know whether this is making sense, but in the end, it's peace of mind that comes from just sitting. And that's a Zen thing, is it? Just sit, but just become aware of your breathing. And I think, Graeme, in the simplest of terms, is to just sit, settle down, give yourself enough love to say, I'm just going to have a break here, and I'm just going to focus on this breathing. And what I've learned is, from a neuroscience point of view, if you can breathe around about 6 breaths per minute, and this works for everybody. I've done thousands and thousands of these on people, and they come in skeptically, which is good. I love honest skeptics. This probably won't work for me, and I have to say, hang on, skeptic, try it first, then you can knock it. So they start to get into it, and it's almost like they settle down, they get a bit of space where a bit more light comes in, which starts to change the way they think, and then they move forward in that. So to me, I think what I'm trying to say is, my head was always distracted by external things, and therefore there was no focus on myself. Graeme, I realized, I thought I was always wanting to have this out-of-body experience and all this sort of business. And somebody said to me, you've never been in your body. So, and I know that because I was in my head since the day that I was born. Digestion and taking all this shit that people were giving me, because this is the way to live. So you come out, don't you? You get smacked on the arse, or you used to, right? And then you get shoved in some sort of other place. And then they've got you, haven't you? The societal engineering starts to happen. This is the best way to live. You have to live by these rules and regulations. Oh, you don't want to be doing that. The natural stuff. You don't want to be doing that. This is the best way to live. So that's where the split in their consciousness comes. That's when everybody becomes a split personality, right? And that's what the conditioned self is. So there's an unconditioned self, which is not touched by conditions, which is the true essential self. And then this other egomania, right? Egomaniacal thing that tries to drive itself forward, trying to follow the rules that it's being given and never being happy, because it's the more it pushes itself forward on this sort of capitalistic, materialistic path, the further it gets away from the truth of who it is. Christ, I'm on one. I better give this back to you straight away.
Oh, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Joe, I think I've contemplated the ego for a while, and it seems like I sometimes call it it's like I think there was a film or a series called The Odd Couple, and it was about it was slightly before my time, but I vaguely remember it. And it's an odd couple that live in a loft flat.
Jack Lemmon and Felix Unger, it was,
lovely. And I sometimes see there's a beautiful line in the Upanishads, And it says, two birds sit on the same tree of life. One jumps around eating the fruit, and one looks on silently. These birds are the best of friends. And I wonder whether that, like, it's like you said at the beginning, taming the mad monkey. And they don't say get rid of the monkey, they say tame it. And I spent a long time in the process of wanting to be more spiritual, trying to get rid of my ego. And it was almost like that what you resist persists, and what you look at dissolves. And they have this word called the jiva in yoga tradition. The idea of a jiva is an individualized soul. And I wonder if we're on a journey of moving through, I wonder if the ego is a self that's built in fight or flight. So it's looking for threat, it's looking to conquer, it's looking to get, it's looking to survive. And I think it's a sense of self that's based on a fear, an underlying fear of not existing and needing to get and control and manipulate. And then I wonder if the jiva is a more evolved reflection, almost like we said at the beginning about I'm whatever energy I'm experiencing. So the ego is a sense of self with its foundation in fear. And the jiva, the individualized self, still an I am an individual, almost like the wave realizes it's the ocean, but doesn't cease to be a wave. It's almost like it can hold the paradox of being an individual, but also one with the ocean exactly the same time. And so I suppose that it's worth maybe exploring that, because I hear a lot in the spiritual community, and I know you're not coming from this place at all, Joe, because I can clearly hear what you're saying. There's this drive to get rid of the ego. I need to get rid of the ego. And in a way, the more we push against it, sometimes the more real it becomes, or it becomes a spiritualized ego that now puts on clothes, changes its name, and now it does all the same stuff, but in the name of spirituality. Now it controls because it wants to help you to overcome your karma, and and so what are your thoughts on the ego, mate? What are your ideas on that?
Yeah, I think there's a normal balanced ego. I think that's called the human mind-body complex. I think that's what it is. The human vehicle is the ego to me. I think the problem is it's the misdirected instincts that are the problem. I think Maslow had this sorted, and I see this in a sort of physical way as well. When a child's born, they don't have a mind of their own as such, but they're bringing with them. And there's also Taoist things here where you come in with Jing energy. So they have Jing, Qi, and Shen. So you have Jing energy is basically your heredity that's brought in with the DNA from the past. So it's still memory as well. It's still the past, right? So you bring that in. Anyway, I digress. The first thing that comes online, right, in the first instinct is the instinct to protect your physical body, and to me, I'll talk about the 7 chakras now. The first thing that comes online is this one is looking out for physical danger, right? And that would be associated with the adrenal glands, so that's the first thing. There's no thought about that. There's danger. So the instinct is there's no second thought. I'm in danger, defend myself. I'm in danger, defend myself. See, and so what happens then is in the first part of life, the child can then learn, depending on its circumstances and environmental conditioning, it can either learn to stand on its own 2 feet and defend itself, or it can be overly smothered, like a motherly smotherly, you see. And this is where parenting comes in as well. I know I'm going all over the place here, but bear with me. But the point is, if a child's motherly smotherly, right, it can't develop its own sense of physical self, right? Anyway, let's say that the normal ego would be, it can stand up for itself, or it can back off as well. So it's got that, it can go back and forward, left and right. So it's not physically constrained or constricted. The next instinct that comes in, and this is Maslowian as well, is the sex one. It's the sex impulse. These are both associated with the medulla oblongata. It's a one-way track. There's no other or either or. It's just a straight line, you see. So we've got these instincts, the security, physical security and sex. They're the first 2 that come in with the medulla oblongata. However, now we've got to go out into society now. This is where the bifurcation happens now. And we get the left and the right hemispheres coming into play. That was when the fruit got eaten. right? When we started to understand the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, self and other than self, you see, that's when the split comes in. And I look at this because I've done a lot of stuff about the Kabbalah and Hebrew traditions and stuff like that. And I think what happens, Graeme, is we've got the one track that way. So that's that naive, narcissistic, the child is all there is. And I want food, I want this, I want this. So there's no sense of other. Are you with me so far?
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So then we've got, oh, hang on, what the fuck? What's that? There's something other than me, right? Now, I think people can get blocked psychologically because this is consciousness development. People can get blocked without going into that bifurcation, right? And they can be primary narcissists because they're like psychopaths. They can't feel anybody else's feelings, you see, right? What happens to them is they go into politics and things like that, you know. Let's not go there. But they're the psychopaths, you know. But I think also there's a secondary narcissism that can come up when you've actually gone into society, but you can't handle it. So you try and break back down into that one-way thinking then. Anyway, I digress. That's called selfishness, self-centeredness, or egocentricity. That's the shadow self, right? So if it's normal and the normal ego is developing, what happens is we go through these different stages of developments, go through physical security, sex, society, self-esteem, self-search, you know, there's 7 stages until we reach self-actualization. Okay. However, most people don't transcend. And the word I use is not ascend, it's transcend. Because I think normal human ego developments is where we transcend previous patterns, but we include them as well. Because what happens is in spirituality, sometimes we can become spiritually egotized, right? And thinking we can see clearly and we know what everybody has to do because we've forgotten where we've come from ourselves, you know. So what I feel is in order to get the balance, you have to let go of everything that you've ever known, everything that you've ever thought. And you basically just have to go back to the breath and say, I don't know what's going on here. I've got no idea. I'm asking you, heart, sacred heart, because I believe now that you've got all the answers here and somebody's told me to do that. Please give me a clue by sending me thoughts, feelings, impressions, any way that works. Just try and give us a clue on what I need to do next here, right? And Graeme, for the last 30 years of my life, I've followed these feelings and my life's been transformed. Have I got it cracked? Not in the slightest, mate, not in the slightest. I tell you when it gets me, easy. Hungry, angry, lonely and tired. Simple things. When I'm hungry, I go back to being a right horrible bastard, right? When I'm angry, just anger. What does anger mean? It means some person, place, thing, event isn't going the way that I think it should, right? So that's the anger. So then to get over anger is let it be, let them get on with it, you know. Lonely, if I'm lonely, I can get onto you. I can say, how are you getting on, Graeme? And we can have that link, you know, or I can go and talk to somebody, right? And tired's the big one. I used to be exhausted, driving myself on to get paperwork done and all that, you know. And I couldn't be talked to. And I became very touchy because I'm on the defensive now and I'm living in instinct. So, yes. So let me just finish off with this. I'm like, you have to stop. Say shut up in a minute.
I'm drinking every word of this. It's so beautiful.
So we start off in instinct. As we develop then and we get into the bifurcation, we then develop our own intellect then, right? And our intellect's developed on what we feel and think on the inside and what we see on the outside as well. But unfortunately, we get swamped with external information and it knocks us off course. So we've got instinct and intellect. Most people never get out of instinct and intellect, right? They keep recycling into this herd thing. So they're caught in the herd. The next stage is very important, and that's the crucifixion. When you're taking on board all the information, you've read all the books, you've got 25 Osho books, and it's still not working for you, right? And then you get to a point where you give up, right? And you want to kill yourself, right? And that's a good thing. You want to kill yourself, but don't do it because there's a next stage to it here. You just surrender and you say, I don't know. I really, really don't know. And that's when the miracle happens. So you don't try and do anything else. You just sit there and you almost hand yourself over then to the universe by going inwards. And then what happens is intuition comes online, right? And then if you can really start to listen to your intuition, eventually inspiration comes in all the time. You don't have to think. It becomes effortless effort. You still have to do stuff, but you're being guided now from an emergent energy rather than something that you're drawing inwards all the time. And that to me is what this is. Now, just let me finish off this bit.
Please,
so you go through the 7 stages of man. You go through adrenal glands, gonads, pancreas, thymus, thyroid, pituitary gland, pineal gland. When all those are balanced, you get a reunification at the crown. And that's when you get the single track again. So you come in naive consciousness and you go out in expanded understanding consciousness. I think that's what it's all about. And if you work it out, Graeme, it goes like that, like a DNA alpha helix like that. It nips up again. And then when you come in again, reincarnated, you're on the next strand of this great chain of being. Over to you, Elchett.
Oh, beautifully put. I completely agree, Joe. Sometimes I look at because we're talking about the physical manifestation of the chakra system. That's and the energy pathways, traveling up through that. Sometimes what my meditation is and what I'm noticing in my own chakra system at the moment is that there seems to be 2 parts to the path. The first is the ascending path up the spine on just purely on an energetic level. And for me, that seems to be they say that the chakras on the back are receiving and the chakras on the front are transmitting. And so I think that dark night of the soul and surrender is finally opening to the don't know, but the don't know is so that we can truly know something that we don't know. But we don't know that we don't know till we don't know, because then we truly know. And so it's that inherent wisdom, which you could call, is infused into life. And then so the first part seems to be an ascension for a lot of people of knowing how to receive love, how to receive joy, how to receive good health, how to receive wisdom, how to receive insight. And then I think or maybe it's different for everyone, but my path seems to have been learn how to receive those things, become nothing. And then somehow in the becoming nothing, then that's allowed to start to express itself. So now I can, I can express insight. Maybe I can see subtle realms. Maybe I can speak my truth, or that not my truth, but speak a truth. Now I can love a type of love that's beyond my own. Now I can experience the expansion of joy and health and well-being. And so sometimes I wonder if that's part of the journey, the destruction of the little I am, so it can become a reflection of the most beautiful I am, but without taking it too personally at the same time. I guess that's...
I think that's what it is. And I see that the chakras are spheres. They're actually spheres, right? Yes. And they've got so many different ways they can go, because this chakra, if we talk about magnetism, we've got one chakra on top of the next in a linear way, if you like, right? But, as one moves there, this one moves, it opens up another flow of energy. This is a bit like Kabbalah. If you look at the Kabbalah or the Kabbalah, there used to be 10 spheres, but apparently 2 have come back online now. So we're back with the sacred 12. And I honestly believe that each human being has 12 portals or potentials of consciousness that bring with it different abilities. Every human being on the planet, right, has got the ability to open up to these 12 levels of consciousness, or not necessarily levels really, but just aspects, because if it's a sphere, there's no levels, because it can turn around all the time, you see. So I think that's a sort of equalizing thing really, that it's not linear. So it's not really Jacob's ladder. It's more like Jacob's balls. Excuse me. Sorry about that, Jacob. But, it's all bollocks to me, But what I'm trying to say is even the chakras themselves, if they're spheres, I think that there's dimensions within those. So, for example, I might have got up to dimension 3 on the first chakra and fully up to 12 on the next one and 9 on the other. And that would represent my soul's resonance. So in this life, I might have come here to put chakra number 1 up to 4. Chakra number 2 is okay, leave it alone. Chakra number 3 needs a bit of adjustment backwards. You see what I mean? So in this, what it's about is if you get into feeling the subtleness of it and you go to each chakra or endocrine gland or whatever, and you feel your way through it, you'll get an idea of whether you need to pull back or go forward. See, for example, if you're oversexed in society and you're being driven even unconsciously by the sex urge, it can cause all sorts of problems in society, can't it? Because anything that moves will do. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So that's obviously going to cause societal problems then. However, you know, if you're afraid, right, and all you're doing out, and number 1, all you're doing out is looking for danger, that means you can't move up into the more intimate things. So your sex life suffers. Do you see what I mean? And then if your sex life suffers because you're blocked in the first chakra, which is your root chakra, which to do with your legs, you can't stand on your own 2 feet. And therefore, when you get into society, you might have societal anxiety then, not because you're afraid of people, it's just because you're afraid of everything. So if you go to an energy worker like me or you, we would probably help them with a horse stance or doing something to get their feet more grounded. And then suddenly what comes online is they start to feel all this sexual energy coming up then, right? And they just want to go for everything then. See, but, you know, understanding the energetics of it, right, is important, because, you know, people who suffer from vertigo come to somebody like me, we get them to do horse stance, right? Go to a doctor, they give you a tablet to try and, you know, shut you up and stop thinking like that and be brave, you know, and stuff. Wonderful. So, Graeme, it's so fascinating, all this. And where I get most of my stuff from is ancient Egyptology, you know. Wow. If you look at Lao Tzu and people like that, he's about 650 BC. But the stuff I'm looking at is about 3,500 BC, you know, and it comes from ancient Egypt, and especially from Imhotep, who was the builder, if you like, or the architect of the first step pyramid, you know. And all my life I've been fascinated by this. And I obviously believe that I'm sort of plugged in some way to that consciousness, because also he was just into vibrations, frequency, and energy. And vibration and energy medicine is the thing that sort of motivated me most of my life. But I didn't really know it until I nearly came to the end of my life, you see. So that's where I'm up to. I've got a clue about how everything works on the one hand, and on the other hand, I haven't got a clue what's going on.
I love that, Joe, and I think I'm totally with you. I think that the chakras and our even sense of self is multidimensional. You know, they exist in different frequencies in different ways, and we can perceive them in different ways. I also feel that it's the chakras maybe go almost infinitely up and infinitely down, and then as we awaken into different soul bodies, we start to expand into bigger chakra systems, and it's almost like a sliding scale that we're working up, perhaps working our way up. Joe, I'm aware that I could literally speak to you all day. This is the most fascinating conversation. What I'm also aware of is that I haven't checked to see if there's any questions. So let me have a really quick switch through and see just if anyone's got any really searching questions. Let's see.
I love this, mate. And, you know, I think what I've learned more than anything else is the thing that's helped me is to realize that I do know next to nothing.
Great.
You know, and there's stuff that you can know, and then there's stuff that's unknown, which you can't know. And then there's stuff that's unknowable as well in this lifetime, you know, and, you know, that's where I'm up to is I'm not really sure what's going on, although I have a sense of that I'll be shown a little bit more today, which will enhance things really.
Beautiful. I love that, Joe. I think just to wrap this conversation off, and I hope we have many, many more, because God, I could just speak about this stuff with you all day. It's so fascinating. But I suppose one of the reasons I set up this, and I think we've probably addressed it quite a lot already, but it's just to kind of round off with any final thoughts. One of I've been wanting to do this kind of conversational thing, whatever we're doing, whether we call it podcast or whatever, I don't know, but I've been wanting to do this for a while in relation to like the Buddha's the reason the Buddha did his whole self-examination and went put himself through the life that he did, like we're all on this hero's journey ourselves as well, is that he wanted to understand the root cause of human suffering and as a service to the world. So what's the cause of suffering? How do I free myself from suffering, overcome it, heal it? But Rumi and Thich Nhat Hanh, they said the suffering is within the suffering. So it's not necessarily that it goes away. Maybe we address it differently. But just to anyone who's really going through some stuff at the moment, is there any advice or insight you could give around suffering, what it is, and maybe how to transcend or work with it? Any final thoughts on that?
I think it's the way that we define suffering, really. As I said before, put your hands up if you're suffering from a particular dis-ease, because I think dis-ease in the mind manifests in different ways physically as well. So I think it does all start off, in my view, like Louise Hay said, between the ears. So I think if you just sit long enough and almost like ask yourself deep and searching questions is, can you please show me the root cause of my dis-ease? And dis-ease to me means ill at ease. And the opposite of that is ease. So there's either dis-ease or ease. So in order to improve, the pain generally doesn't go away, but it bothers you less. And because it bothers you less, the pain goes away. It's that paradoxical situation. So if you understand it more at depth, that I think if this is about self-awareness really, and becoming more aware of who you really are and not what you're pretending to be. So I will get to the answer in a second, right? What I would suggest is just give this a try. Sit quietly. Try and get away from all distractions just for 10 minutes and go and sit and just tap on your heart like that and say, look, I've just been listening to these two fellas on the doodah and they said, try this. So I'm going to give it a bash. Tap onto your heart like that and just imagine that you've got a source of wisdom, a fount of all knowledge within your heart, and just say, I really don't know what's the best thing to do here. Will you show me, please? And then just wait. And it doesn't matter if nothing happens there. At least you've asked the question. And then after the 10 minutes, get on with your day and then do the same thing tomorrow, or you can do it before you go to sleep. That will be a good time. And that's what I did, Graeme. Somebody suggested that to me. You've tried everything else. You've read all the books in the world. Has it worked for you? No. Well, do yourself a favor. Throw all that away and just ask and listen to your heart. And that's what I'd say, Graeme, is learning to listen and listening to learn to your heart, right? And I'm not a religious person. I've binned religion because I think religion is like an obstruction to me. I'm only saying to me, you can cut out the middleman, which I think what religion is to a lot of people, and you can go straight to the source of the information that you need to improve your life, one breath at a time, one day at a time, and one choice at a time. So to cut its story is just sit, become aware of your breathing and ask the question, will you help me, please?
Beautiful. It's the Eastern tradition that you're speaking to as well. It's the Joe tradition that is reflected in the East as well. That it says, the ultimate is surrender, but it's not surrender for the purpose of surrender. It's surrender because if you surrender, then there's a peace. And then within that peace, again, reflecting on vibration, peace is a more potent vibration than stress and worry. So when you can connect with a lighter vibrational state of peace or love or surrender, that might have a wisdom and a knowing that you couldn't see because of the cloudiness of a lower emotional state. So I guess I love the sound of that in relation to my understanding of energy and consciousness. But I also really hear that, listen to the wisdom of the heart, tap into it, and that you find that you may not even get a direct experience or message then and there, but if you just stay open and stay connected, the chances are you'll be receptive to something at some point. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think if you start to feel sad and you start to feel like crying, you've definitely found the right place. And I think one of the biggest problems is we've been trained to be brave And it's probably not the thing that we need now. We need to be sensitive and give ourselves permission to basically, I cried my leg off for about 6 months when this all happened to me. And for like a rugby player who was, people used to come to me, oh, what shall I do? Oh, bollocks, Graham, absolute nonsense, mate. Used to do martial arts and all sorts of different martial arts, like yourself, right? And people used to come protect me and all that. And I'd be quaking on the inside, So the whole point was to let go of that outer tension, the years and years and years of outer tension. Start to do stretching, but when the emotions come up, give myself permission to express them and let them go, not analyze them. It was to actually feel them, feel the feeling, let it go. And when it's out of arm's length, then have a look at them and say, I see what that's associated with now. But if you get an emotional feeling and it comes up and it goes into your head, it'll drive you mad. So when the feeling comes in your gut, open your heart up more and allow it to be transformed through the heart before it reaches your head. And that's what I would say, because most of my life, I was a gut, head, gut sort of a person. I didn't realize that the transformation happens through the heart. That's the mediator, the moderator, the master, the Christ, whatever you want to call that. And I suppose if you're a Christian, Christ is reputed to have said, cast all your fears on me. And I think what that meant was, put all your fears in your heart. Let Christ do the job of transforming it and letting it out in little bloops to say, try this now. So it will be, I have more of a thing with Mary Magdalene, actually. I love Mary Magdalene at depth for some reason, but I feel it's better for me not working with Jesus, right? I more work with Mary Magdalene because I have a different sense with her. And I say, Mary, do us a favor. I'm having trouble here. Sort that out for us, will you? And give us a clue. And I have a sense of that it's being worked on in the background, So, I call on anybody. If Jesus is busy and he's gone for chips or something like that, it'll be Mary if she's shopping down the quickie, right? I'll say, Budder, pop over here, son, because I don't have a thing now where anybody or anything is above me. We're all working at the same level here to move together the same. So I had to get rid of putting things and people on pedestals, and I have to come down to one level that we're all in this boat together. Each of us has got a particular set of skills that when applied to helping everybody else will definitely change the way things are going, I call that the new system of government is called soulocracy. And I think when we're working from, rather than democracy, because that's obviously failing, soulocracy means choose or let the heart choose the next way forward for everybody.
Beautiful.
I'm sorry I've gone on, mate. I don't know how to go on when I get going.
Goodness,
you know what I mean?
But this has been fascinating, Joe, and you haven't gone on at all. You've just been, I'm lapping up every word. It's been so beautiful. To finish, just on the idea of Mary or Mary Magdalene, I've watched a few documentaries over the last couple of weeks on, Saint Bernadette, where these miraculous happenings have happened somewhere in the world. And there was one about 1500 years ago in Mexico in which the Mary appears on this cloth, and this cloth should only last 10 years before it perishes, is because it's made out of cactus, and for 1,500 years later it's still there with this energy imprint on it and is worshipped. But what really struck me about all these apparitions of Mary, if you like, these maybe some kind of download, is it's always the feminine now, and all these visions of Mary steering even the religion of Christianity is a very much get out of the head and get into the sacred heart, love and have compassion. So it really ties in on a metaphysical level what you're describing about the awakening of the divine feminine within us all as well. So Joe, I've really enjoyed this chat today, mate, and I really look forward to doing it again sometime.
Me too, mate, and thanks for inviting me. And have a nice day. And keep in touch and speak to you soon.
I look forward to that, mate. Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.